I think I've told this story a few times in different live streams, but when I was a kid, I think when I was 12 or 13, there was this website called All Experts, and I do believe that it actually is still around. But basically, you could submit your Yu-Gi-Oh questions to Yu-Gi-Oh experts, quote unquote, and they would reply to them publicly. And one of the things that I wanted to do was get feedback on a deck that I thought was very, very powerful. That deck ended up being just like a really random warrior toolbox strategy. I think the only 3 of in the entire deck were 2 level 4 6 samurai monsters with no other 6 samurai monsters in the entire deck. It was a complete mess, but one of the things that I did when I submitted that deck list, because I didn't want to seem dumb, which is kind of funny because it made me look a lot stupider than I was, I said that I just got a top 8 at a regional with this deck. Now, I didn't think that the person reading it, the expert, would even pay attention to that remark, but actually when they ended up replying, they didn't like roast me. I was just a little kid after all, and I think you had to put your age on All Experts, so they knew I was a younger kid. But they did say, I don't think you got top 8 with this strategy because I haven't heard anything about this, and also I'm sure the deck list just looked horrible. And I bring this up because I get comments all the time from people that claim that they're doing well at regionals with some of the cards that I call bad, and I think that this just happens because people that don't play at regionals really just don't understand how good your deck has to be to even get a top 32 finish. It doesn't have to be phenomenal, it doesn't have to be optimized, but to even get a top 32 at a regional, you have to be playing sort of a competent strategy, not something with just a bunch of god cards in it. And I bring this up because another comment that I get a lot of that I think is sort of the same people leaving a slightly different comment is from people that don't really realize that Yu-Gi-Oh takes 2 players to play. And that might sound silly, and I know that there's always going to be some comments, especially with a title like this, where people are just like, well, Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't take 2 players to play when you just extra link your opponent games 1 and 3. And while that is true, I really do want to stress that Yu-Gi-Oh isn't all about break my board, first turn sort of explosive strategies, and that many games outside of Goki's right now actually do go several turns past turn 1, sometimes even going into turn 10 or higher if you have a control mirror match. And that's something that a lot of people that haven't been playing the game very long don't actually realize about competitive play. We know that there's a lot of tier 0 formats, and sometimes there are these decks that make these ridiculous boards where you can't play the game, but in general, even in 2018, almost 2019, most decks, most matches are actually taking multiple turns. I mention this because I get comments from people bringing up these combos that are super convoluted, and they just ignore their opponent having any interaction. I think it happens most on my worst structure deck video, which is where I'm talking about the rock structure deck from way back in the day. And one of the reasons that this comes up here is because none of those cards have any protection. Exod is the boss monster of it. It's really, really bad. But I get a ton of comments, like more than I'd ever expect, from people that say, I didn't know how to use Exod. I didn't realize that you could flip summon all the different flip guys and flip them back face down, burn my opponent for 1,000 damage, and that I just didn't realize that combo. What they're forgetting is that Yu-Gi-Oh is for 2 players, and while they're slowly flipping guys up every turn, if they can even get Exod on the board with a couple monsters face down, what they're forgetting is that their opponent isn't just sitting there letting them do all that. They're going to have some responses, they're going to have some monsters, they're going to have some destruction effects, and that's sort of a hurdle that I think a lot of people get stuck on when they're deck building. They don't realize that when they do a 5-card opening hand, that many times their opponent's going to have some forms of disruption for that, even more so now that we're in 2018 where there's so many hand traps. Even when you go first, you have to play around disruption. And I think a lot of the times people say, Doug, why isn't this deck a little better? Every time that I play test with myself and do test hands, I'm opening up these crazy combos. Well, a lot of casual players and even competitive players that aren't the highest competitive players, when they sit down and do test hands, and I think I've even done this myself, you just don't really think about what your opponent might have. You don't want to think that your opponent might have 2 hand traps, and certainly your opponent isn't always going to have 2 hand traps, but a lot of the times they will have at least 1. And I think a lot of people, when they're doing their test hands, I think of decks like Synchrons, like Doppel Warrior, way back in the day after it was good, but before we had links, people would say, well, why isn't this deck good? There's so many 2 and 3 card Quasar combos. Why isn't that strong enough? Why is this deck not topping? They're not really thinking about going first against hand traps. They're really not thinking about going second, and they're definitely not thinking about all the garnets that their deck plays. Obviously, obviously I've played a lot of decks with Garnets, but in general, I think people just forget that Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually is between two players, and it's not just themselves sitting down going first every single game and getting the optimal board set up without playing through any hand traps. Where this comes into play outside of deck building is actually one of my very first discussion videos that I ever did on the channel. I mean, most of you subscribing now know that I do a lot of these video essay type videos where I'm just talking about cards and strategies and all that sort of stuff, but for a very long time I pretty much just did deck profiles and live duels, and we're talking about like 2011 through 2013, but what I did a couple years after that, I think in like 2015, 2016, I don't know the exact date, I did a video talking about what happens when a lot of times whenever you guys beat someone that maybe isn't as competitive as you at like a regional qualifier or even a locals, a lot of the times they'll look at like the next couple draws that they would have gotten, and I think one of the ones that comes up all the time is they'll like draw until they hit a Regeki and then say, oh, I could have just Regeki'd you for the win. Even if this is only one draw later, I think it is ridiculous, and what that video was titled was like, oh, I only needed one more draw, and that's really bad to think about because that sort of mindset where you're telling yourself, oh, if I would have just had one more turn, sort of alleviates you as the player from actually thinking critically about what happened, because what you should be thinking about, this is kind of what I talked about in that first discussion video, is you should have been thinking not how many more turns I needed until I drew my Saki Unsearchable one of, you should have been thinking where else in the duel did I screw up, or even more of like a meta analysis, not so much like the meta in Yu-Gi-Oh, but like what actually meta analysis means. Anyway, the meta analysis would be, how could I have built my deck differently to not put myself in the situations that I found myself in? That is something that you can do. That's not even like a gameplay element. It's just like before the match even started, was there something that you could have done differently to make this matchup easier? Well, the moral is, and something that I do, and something that's a really big difference maker for someone trying to get to the next level of competitive play, when you lose a game, just don't look at the next cards on the top of your deck. And that might sound easy, but honestly, if you go to a regional qualifier, pretty much every single round you play, the person that loses will always just pick up the next couple cards in their deck, as long as it's not like at the XO tables or the X1 tables or sometimes the X2 tables. Usually the higher caliber players do not look at the next cards in their deck, where the lower caliber players just in general tend to do that more often because they don't realize that they don't have those extra turns. Like if you're looking at like 4 cards down, that's so ridiculous. Like, yeah, you might have drawn Regeki in 4 turns, but do you think your opponent is just passing 4 turns in a row? And even if they were passing, like, I mean, wouldn't they still have the board they would be able to just kill you with after 4 turns of attacking directly? Whenever you're looking even just past 1 card on top of your deck, it just doesn't really matter, and you're sort of showing that cognitive dissonance where you're just saying, well, I'm going to ignore what my opponent might have done because I just want to get as many draws as possible. So if you're someone that's watching this video and you do check the next card on your deck or the next couple cards, I implore you to just stop doing that. It'll make a huge difference, because you might be saying, well, what if I just had 1 more turn, or what if I just had 2 more turns? The fact of the matter is you didn't, you lost. So look back at the turns that already happened, that did happen, and ask yourself, how could I have done things differently? Was there a certain card that I wasn't sure about that maybe I could have played something different for? For example, maybe you side decked into the wrong cards. Maybe you side decked into multiple copies of evenly matched, and then you sort of bricked with them, where you could have sided with Twin Twisters and you would have been able to actually destroy your opponent's back row while discarding the extra Twin Twisters that you drew. Maybe that came up, something like that, where it's like you side decked into the wrong card. Maybe you side decked out the wrong card and you really needed a card that you took out. A lot of times when I'm playing Altergeist and going first in games 2 and 3, I'll side out Altergeist Concrete. It's not really that good card going second. It doesn't really start any combos. It's only good when you already have a combo up. But yeah, there certainly are games where I miss that card, and then I have to ask myself, is it worth putting this card in here for the games that I miss it, or is it just not consistent enough to have games 2 and 3? These are the types of critical analysis questions that you have to be asking yourself if you're interested in becoming a more competitive player. I was going to say just like a better player, but no, just more competitive, because I think in a lot of these cases, the players that I'm playing against that look at the next couple cards in their deck, it's not that they're not competitive, it's just that this is one step more that they could take to make themselves better at competitive play, and sort of realizing that you don't have those extra turns, and even if you did have those extra turns, your opponent would be making plays at the same time as well. So this all sort of brings us back to that point that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is meant to have two players, and even though there are some lockout strategies, the reasons that many decks aren't good is because people aren't really looking at them in the context of what are they going to be playing against, how good are they going second, how good are they post side decking, are there side deck cards that their opponent will be playing that'll completely shut them down. People just a lot of the times do not think about these things. They only think of Yu-Gi-Oh! In like a vacuum of them going first without side decking, and that's a big deal. Maybe I should make another video if you guys want to hear about it. One of the things that sort of completely changed my mind about side decking, a lot of people, they just throw together side decks when they're just getting competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! But when you really think about it, and this sort of blew my mind the first time I heard about it, even though it's really straightforward, you will always play more side decked games than you will unside decked games, because even if you 2-0 everyone, that's one side deck game and one non-side deck game. As long as there's any game that goes to game 3, win or loss, you're going to be playing more games with a side deck. So the fact that people just throw it together is kind of disappointing, and they're actually hurting their competitive impact on the metagame. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoy this discussion video. I kind of want to do a throwback to an earlier discussion I did, but with a lot better analysis. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.